The doctor looked at me across her desk and said, "I'm confused about something in your file." I asked her what she meant. "There's a note here, added about 18 months ago, stating that you had been informed of a fertility diagnosis. I had never received any such diagnosis. I had never had that conversation with any doctor." "Who added that note?" I asked. She checked the system. The note had been added, following a phone inquiry, not from me, from a woman who had identified herself as my next of kin. I only had one, female next of kin, registered at that practice. My mother-in-law, Margaret, who had spent the last 2 years telling my husband, his family, and apparently our GP, that I would never be able to have children. The problem with that is that I was 12 weeks pregnant, sitting in that chair. My name is not important. What matters is that I married into a family where the mother had never loosened her grip on her only son. Daniel was 41 when we met. Successful, kind, patient, in the way that only people who have survived difficult childhoods ever truly are. Margaret was 67 years old, sharp-minded, beautifully presented, and absolutely convinced that no woman on earth was good enough for her son. Before me, there had been others. Daniel had told me carefully, the way you tell someone about a minefield, that 2 previous relationships had ended in ways that Margaret had influenced. I had heard that and done what most people do. Told myself I would be different, that I would win her over, that patience and kindness would eventually work. I was wrong. The first 2 years of our marriage were difficult. In the way that fog is difficult, you can't grab it, you can't see through it, but it slows down everything. Daniel became quieter around certain topics. Conversations about children ended strangely. His family gatherings felt like rooms where everyone knew something I didn't. I felt it, but I couldn't name it. Not yet. It started with a conversation at Christmas. Daniel's aunt, a woman I had always liked, warm and direct in equal measure, pulled me aside in the kitchen. She said, "I want you to know, I never believed it. I told Margaret that from the beginning." I asked her what she meant. She looked at me for a long moment. "About your condition, your fertility." I had no condition. I asked her where she had heard that. Margaret told us, about 2 years ago. She said you had been diagnosed and hadn't told Daniel, and that it wasn't fair to keep him in the dark about something so important. 2 years ago. That was 3 months into our marriage. I asked her who else Margaret had told. She hesitated. "Most of the family, and I believe she may have spoken to your GP practice as well." She mentioned she had confirmed the diagnosis. With the surgery, the room felt very far away. I excused myself, went to the bathroom, sat on the edge of the bath for 10 minutes, not crying, calculating, because I had just found the source of the fog. Margaret had not just told her family I was infertile. She had constructed a medical narrative, contacted our GP practice, impersonated a next of kin inquiry, and inserted false information into my medical record to pressure my husband into leaving me, quietly, methodically, over 2 years, while smiling at me across every dinner table. I want you to understand what this had actually cost. Daniel and I had been trying to conceive for 14 months. 14 months of hope and disappointment and quiet, careful heartbreak. During that time, Daniel had been carrying something he hadn't told me. I know this because after I found out about Margaret, I asked him directly, had he ever doubted whether we would succeed? He was quiet for a very long time. He said, "My mother told me early on that there might be challenges, that she'd heard something from someone close to you. I didn't want to upset you by bringing it up." He had been grieving something that didn't exist because his mother had planted it in his mind before we'd even had the chance to try. 14 months. She had stolen 14 months of hope from my husband and replaced it with a quiet, creeping doubt about me, about us, about whether our marriage had a future. That was the moment. I stopped trying to win Margaret over and started building something else entirely. I did not tell Daniel what I had found out. Not immediately, because I needed to understand the full extent before I decided what to do with it. Step 1. I contacted my GP practice directly. I requested a full copy of my medical record under data protection legislation. The note was there, exactly as the doctor had described. A phone inquiry logged 18 months ago from a woman who identified herself as a family member, providing what she described as relevant medical background for the patient's file. It was not signed, but the inquiry had been logged with a callback number. I called that number. Margaret answered on the second ring. I said nothing for a moment. Then I said, "Hello, Margaret." Silence. "I've just been looking at my medical records. I was wondering if you could help me understand something." She hung up. Step 2. I filed a formal complaint with the GP practice and contacted the Information Commissioner's office regarding unauthorised access to my medical information. A solicitor confirmed that what Margaret had done, impersonating a next of kin, inserting false medical information, attempting to influence a patient's record, was a serious breach of data protection law and potentially criminal. I had the callback number. I had the logged note. I had the aunt's testimony. I had 2 years of context. Step 3. I told Daniel. We sat in our kitchen on a Wednesday evening. I placed the printed medical record on the table between us. I placed the solicitor's letter beside it. I placed a printed call log of the callback number beneath that. Then I sat down and I let him read. He read for a long time. When he looked up, his face had changed in a way I had never seen before. He said, "How long have you known?" 3 weeks, I said. "Why didn't you tell me straight away?" "Because I wanted to make sure you had everything you needed to see it clearly, not through anger, through evidence." He nodded slowly. Then he picked up his phone and called his mother. I only heard one side of the conversation. Daniel said, "I need you to tell me if this is true. Then, don't tell me it was complicated. Tell me if it's true. Then nothing. For almost a minute. Then, I need some time." He ended the call, put the phone face down, looked at me. She didn't deny it. She said she was trying to protect me. The same words every betrayer uses. I was trying to protect you. Daniel did something then that I did not expect. He apologized to me, not for his mother. He was clear about that. He apologized for the 14 months he had carried her words, without questioning them, for the doubt he had never spoken out loud, but had let exist in the silence between us. I told him. He had nothing to apologize for. He had been. Her victim too. Margaret called 7 times that evening. Daniel did not answer. The following week, he met her for coffee, alone. He came home and told me that she had cried, explained, justified, and ultimately asked for forgiveness. He said, "I told her that forgiveness isn't mine to give. It belongs to you, and that whatever you decide, I'll support completely." I had not expected that. Not because Daniel wasn't a good man, but because mothers are powerful things, and choosing your wife over your mother is not a small decision. I did not pursue the legal complaint further, not out of forgiveness, out of strategy. I kept every document, every record, every letter, because the receipts don't need to be used to be powerful. They just need to exist. And Margaret knows they exist. She has been considerably quieter since that Wednesday evening, and our daughter, born 4 months ago, has her grandmother's eyes, which I find quietly satisfying. I've thought a lot about what Margaret was really afraid of. Not me, specifically. She was afraid of losing the one relationship that had defined her identity for 41 years, her son. And instead of dealing with that fear honestly, She chose to construct a reality in which I was the obstacle. Here's what I know about people who operate this way. They are not evil, usually. They are frightened, but frightened people with access to your life and the willingness to use it are among the most dangerous forces a marriage can face, because they don't attack the marriage directly. They whisper, they suggest, they plant seeds that grow in the dark. And by the time you find them, they've been growing for years. The only answer to someone who operates in shadows is to bring everything into the light, not out of cruelty, but because light is the only thing that stops shadows from growing. Margaret left receipts. I simply switched on the light. Before you go, I need your honest take. Daniel chose to stand with me, completely. He cut contact with Margaret for 4 months. Some people say he should have been more understanding of his mother, that her behaviour, while wrong, came from fear, not malice. Others say he didn't go far enough, that what she did was unforgivable. Tell me in the comments, did Daniel do the right thing? And has anyone in your life ever tried to quietly dismantle something you were building? Drop your story below. I read every single one. Subscribe to Bleeding Receipts. New story every week, because betrayal always leaves proof.